The ghost flight, deconstructing the mystery of MH370, an age of relentless surveillance and constant connection. The complete disappearance of a modern Boeing 777 airliner defied all logic. The vanishing of Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 on March 8, 2014, was more than a tragedy, it was an event that exposed a terrifying vulnerability in global aviation, a ghost that slipped through the digital net that encircles our world. How could a state-of-the-art airliner, tracked by satellite and radar, simply cease to exist, with 239 souls on board who sent the final comm message before the aircraft plunged into an impossible silence? What followed was not a simple crash, but a mystery that would become the most profound in the history of flight. The flight began as a routine red-eye from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing. Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 departed at 0:40 to MIT, climbing into the night sky on its planned northeastern path over the South China Sea. For 38 minutes, everything was normal. At 1:19, the flight crew made their last voice communication with Malaysian Air Traffic Control, ACOM, and routine handover message from the cockpit, "Good night." Malaysian 370. Just moments later, at precisely 1:21 MIT, the aircraft reached the edge of Malaysian airspace. Then, it vanished. The aircraft's transponder, the device that communicates its identity and altitude to civilian radar, suddenly went dark. On air traffic control screens across the region, the symbol for MH370 simply blinked out of existence, leaving behind an unnerving void. This sudden, total silence was the start of modern aviation's greatest enigma. But this initial disappearance was just the first layer of a far more complex and deliberate series of events, a truth that would only begin to surface thanks to the silent watch of military technology. While Flight 370 became a ghost to civilian air traffic control, it was not entirely invisible. Military primary radar, which works by bouncing radio waves off targets rather than relying on a transponder signal, was still tracking an unidentified aircraft. This data would fundamentally change the investigation, shifting the narrative away from a catastrophic accident and toward a deliberate act of diversion. The plane had not fallen out of the sky, it had been taken. The critical findings from Malaysian military radar were stunning. Instead of continuing northeast toward Vietnam, the aircraft made a sharp, deliberate turn back to the west, flying across the Malay Peninsula. It was a phantom, flying without identification, silently cutting a path through the night while fluctuating between 31,000 and 33,000 feet in altitude. The military radar tracked this unidentified aircraft as it flew out over the Andaman Sea, a path that took it hundreds of miles off its scheduled course. The last known military radar detection came at 2:20 to MIT, when the aircraft was 200 nautical miles northwest of Penang Island. This single piece of data was a bombshell. It proved that for more than an hour after its communications were silenced and its identity erased, MH370 was not a lost or crippled plane. It was actively being flown, under control, on a new and mysterious heading. The question was no longer what had happened to the aircraft, but who was in command of its destiny. With the evidence overwhelmingly pointing to a deliberate act, the investigation turned from the wreckage to the human element. The psychological state and motivations of the man in command, 52-year-old Captain Zaharie Ahmad Shah, became the central focus of the mystery. If the plane was intentionally diverted, investigators had to consider the unthinkable, that the pilot himself was responsible. The most damning piece of evidence was discovered not in the sky, but in the pilot's own home. An FBI analysis of Captain Zaharie's personal flight simulator recovered deleted data points that revealed a shocking truth. He had run a simulation on his computer that closely matched the flight path investigators now suspected MH370 had taken a long, lonely route deep into the remote southern Indian Ocean. This simulated flight, ending in fuel exhaustion over the ocean, was an eerie rehearsal for what appeared to be the plane's actual fate. Supporting this deeply unsettling theory were other contextual details. Former Australian Prime Minister Tony Abbott later stated that he understood from the very top levels of the Malaysian government that they believed from very early on the event was a case of murder-suicide by the pilot. Reports also noted that Captain Shah was a supporter of a Malaysian opposition leader who had been jailed on contentious charges just one day before the flight, though the pilot's family has vehemently denied any possibility of suicide. While the evidence pointing to the pilot is compelling, it remains entirely circumstantial. The only way to know the plane's ultimate fate was to follow a faint trail of digital evidence it left behind as it flew into oblivion. Long after MH370 vanished from all radar, it continued to communicate in faint, automated whispers. This became the story's major forensic breakthrough, a moment when investigators learned to listen to signals that were never designed for tracking. For nearly 6 hours, the aircraft's satellite data unit sent a series of automated handshakes to a satellite operated by the British company Inmarsat. These digital echoes, little more than background noise in the global communications network, allowed investigators to follow a ghost plane across a vast and empty ocean. This data yielded to crucial forensic clues. The first was a measure of distance, known as burst timing offset, which came from the time it took for a signal to travel from the satellite to the plane and back, creating a series of vast circles or arcs on the Earth's surface where the plane had to be. The second clue was a measure of motion called burst frequency offset, which used the Doppler effect, the same principle that changes the pitch of an ambulance siren to determine if the plane was moving toward or away from the satellite. By combining the distance data with the motion data, investigators made their most critical deduction. They were able to dismiss the theory of a northern flight path over Asia and confidently determine that MH370 had turned south, flying 4 hours over the desolate Indian Ocean. This analysis led them to the seventh arc, the circle of position derived from the final handshake received at 8:19 minutes. This arc, a lonely curve in the world's most remote ocean, represented the most probable location of the crash. This ghostly digital echo born from a system that meant for this purpose finally gave the search a destination and led to a chilling hypothesis about the aircraft's final lonely moments. And if you find this forensic puzzle as compelling as we do, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel to support more deep dive investigations like this. Based on the Inmarsat satellite data and the aircraft's fuel capacity, investigators were able to reconstruct the most likely end-of-flight scenario. After hours of silent, powered flight across the southern Indian Ocean, MH370 ran out of fuel and began its final, unpiloted descent into one of the most remote places on Earth. This was not a controlled landing, but the violent end of a ghost flight. The Australian Transport Safety Bureau, or ATSB, advanced the leading hypothesis, an unresponsive crew or hypoxia event. This theory suggests that after the initial turn, those in the cockpit were incapacitated, leaving the plane to fly on autopilot 4 hours until its tanks ran dry. The aircraft, a modern marvel of engineering, effectively became its own tomb, flying a perfectly straight path toward its doom. Investigators believe the final log-on request, sent at 8:19 minutes, was the aircraft's last gasp. Fuel exhaustion would have caused both engines to flame out, triggering the deployment of the ram air turbine, a small propeller that provides emergency power. This event would have briefly restored electricity to the satellite data unit, causing it to reboot and send one final, automated log-on request before the plane fell from the sky. The forensic evidence recovered from the ocean supports this violent conclusion. An examination of the right flaperon, discovered on Reunion Island, revealed that the landing flaps were not extended. This crucial detail suggests the aircraft was not configured for a controlled ditching, but rather plunged into the sea in a high-speed, uncontrolled spiral dive. The theory of the flight's end was now clear, but the massive real-world effort to find its physical remains was just beginning. The aftermath of MH370's disappearance triggered the most expensive and technologically advanced search in aviation history. This immense international effort, spanning years and costing hundreds of millions of dollars, was driven by a profound and desperate need to provide answers to the grieving families of the 239 people on board, and to solve a mystery that had shaken the world's faith in modern aviation. The initial search was a story of confusion and false starts, focused on the South China Sea, where the plane first disappeared. Only after the inmarsat data revealed the southern corridor did the effort shift to the vast, unforgiving expanse of the southern Indian Ocean, led by Australia. For 3 years, crews scoured 120,000 square kilometers of rugged, deep-sea terrain, but the official underwater search was suspended in January 2017 without success. While the main wreckage remained elusive, a scattered trail of physical evidence began to wash ashore on distant coastlines. It began in July 2015, when the aircraft's flaperon was found on Reunion Island, thousands of kilometers from the search zone. This was followed by confirmed or highly likely parts of the plane found in Mozambique, South Africa, and Tanzania. Drift analysis of these ghostly fragments confirmed they were all consistent with a crash along the 7th arc, validating the painstaking satellite data analysis. An unsuccessful private search by the American company Ocean Infinity in 2018 also failed to locate the wreckage, but after a decade of mystery, a newly approved search by the same company is set to begin in 2025, bringing with it a renewed hope for answers. After all this time, the quest for closure continues. The legacy of Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 is one of profound loss, but also of critical change. The event exposed shocking gaps in modern aviation technology, forcing global regulators like the International Civil Aviation Organization to confront the unthinkable possibility of a commercial airliner simply vanishing. In response, the ICAO implemented new standards designed to ensure such a disappearance can never happen again, including requirements for autonomous position reporting over open oceans and new rules mandating longer-lasting flight recorder batteries and extended cockpit voice recording times. Despite these advances, the core mystery remains unsolved. The Malaysian Ministry of Transport's final report, issued in July 2018, was ultimately inconclusive. While investigators could not rule out unlawful interference by a third party, they formally stated that the definitive cause of the disappearance cannot be determined without the recovery of the main wreckage. The black boxes, which hold the final answers, remain lost in the depths of the Indian Ocean. A decade on, the southern Indian Ocean keeps its secrets, leaving only a deafening silence where the final answers for 239 souls still wait in the dark. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into one of modern history's most compelling mysteries. If you found this investigation valuable, please like and share this video. We want to hear from you in the comments below. What do you believe is the most convincing theory behind the disappearance of MH370? And do you think the new search by Ocean Infinity will finally solve the mystery?